Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Weirdly Magical podcast with Jen and Lou. And I am Lou, and Jen will introduce herself in a minute. But before we introduce ourselves, just a little housekeeping that we do take questions on this podcast. And I don't think we have one this time, though, do we, Jen? No. But if you have a question you would like answered on the podcast, send it to weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com. We also have a patreon.com. So for just $3 a month, you can support our work on this podcast. There's a few running costs. So really, we're just looking for support with that. And it's patreon.com/weirdlymagical. And leave us reviews. That was the other thing. Reviews on iTunes, preferably, even if you don't listen to us on iTunes, because reviews are where it's at, and that's what gets the podcast more attention. So if you could leave a written review, we'd be extremely grateful. So Jen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jen Dishin, and I am an Akashic reader, teacher, astronumerologist, and creator of the Illuminating Journey cards. And I guide my clients to activate their soul purpose so they can live in joy.
Awesome. And I am Louise Eddington, shamanic astrologer for kick-ass women and author of 2 books, Modern Astrology and my newest book, The Complete Guide to Astrology, which is doing really well and got some great endorsements and reviews. So check that out if you like. What else about me? I would like to mention as well that Mercury station's retrograde on Sunday. We're going to talk about that as part of this lunation, but I am offering a completely free Mercury retrograde short, quick class to help guide people through this particular Mercury retrograde, which I think is going to be a little foggy and confusing, but also is going to be awesome for your imagination and intuition. So today sorry?
I just said for sure.
And today we are going to be discussing the energy of and around the Pisces new moon, which takes place on February the 23rd at 3:31 p.m. Universal Time, which is the old Greenwich Mean Time. And it takes place at 4 degrees and 28 minutes of Pisces, conjunct retrograde Mercury, in aspect to outer bounds Mars in Capricorn, and also Chiron in Aries and Uranus in Taurus. And there's other things going on in the chart too that we will talk about. It's also in aspect to the lunar nodes. So it's actually pretty big new moon. There's a lot going on that we're going to talk about, and there's a lot going on that's connected to the charts of some of the countries around the world. So we'll mention that as well, I think. So this is the 5th of 6 new moons at 4 degrees. So Jen's going to talk more about the numbers, but I find it interesting, Jen, that it's 4 degrees, 28 minutes. So there's 4, 2, and 8. So there's kind of all that math going on in there as well. So what do you think to that, Jen?
Well, yes, because the thing that's so fascinating is that we're in a 4 year this year, right? And 4 is this energy of rooting or kind of connecting to a system or to something new, to create something new and make sure that it has integrity, right? Whatever it is, you're building something, it's laying a foundation, it's planting roots in the earth, it's stabilizing things. So it has a lot to do with the Saturn energy. And with all these 4s just repeating over and over, and then 2, 4, and 8 are the manifesting numbers. So it really is a huge message to us to focus on what we want to root and plant and create, because there is so much going on, and we do have a lot of disruption, disturbance, things that are taking us away from who we are. Not that we haven't had that for a long time, but it's like the world and the universe is saying, okay, you've looked, you've thought, you've imagined, you've protested, and now it's time to actually start to activate, really start to plant or root in this energy, because the 4 is connected to the earth, and it is connected to this idea of being at home, right? At home with ourselves, at home with our history, at home with the idea of where we're going, what are we creating, because that's our safety. Our, it's like, this is who we are, this is what we're creating as individuals and collectively, right? Home is not just as an individual. We live in spaces, in our bodies, on this earth, and all of that collectively. So we have to look at that, like, how do we find our space within the collective?
Mm. And the kind of main aspect configuration with this new moon, of course, is the conjunction with Mercury, which is retrograde. It's a very it's a real call to go within and check in with your intuition about what you're building. But then it's the main 2 aspects are this kind of mini grand trine, if you like, to 2 earth signs, Uranus in Taurus, an earth sign, and then Mars in Capricorn, an earth sign, and the South Node and Mars together over there. And I always really, and I've said it many times, I always kind of think of this combination of energies as real kind of sculpting. And with Mars being out of bounds and Uranus being the planet of lightning bolts and surprises anyway, we're kind of being asked to really shift our perspective and shift our inner perspective a lot as well, and go in and really look at things differently. Because my favorite quote has always been, for a long time, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's a very true quote, but it's the same. People tend to think of it as looking at the outer world, which is true, but also if you look at your inner world, what's not working, what do you need to shift, and what do you need to change so that you can build these earthly foundations that are in alignment with your intuition and your inner space.
Right. So this is a kind of like, it's a paring down or a drawing away the, you can say the kind of pus in your head or in your world, like this idea that someone else is telling you what the truth is. Someone else is telling you what's good for you. Somebody else is saying this is how your body's supposed to be, etc., etc., etc. And now it's this idea like, oh, maybe I don't need to listen because I actually have some of my own wisdom. I have my own intelligence. And I think 4 also represents the wisdom of how we actually become part of the world, right? And we become part of the world by doing. We take an idea and we make it real. And having those numbers 2, 4, and 8 repeating through all of this is reminding us that's what we need to do. We need to attend to the details that matter. We need to focus on building something that has honesty and the honesty of a structure that's going to withstand a lot of battering. We just need to look around at what people are doing and how they use the idea of air and communication and pictures to manipulate our thoughts, right?
And bringing in that Pisces kind of smoke and mirrors kind of film aspect too. We're in Pisces and it's so strong. Pisces, of course, has its wonderful qualities, but there's a lot of delusion, illusion under Pisces as well. And, I think of one particular candidate in the US who's in the Democratic Party, who's just gaining through TV ads that are really slick and designed to manipulate. And that's the Pisces energy. It's like, here, let me take you in.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what's so fascinating about this whole thing is that this is an opportunity to watch how illusion is created, but also to choose the illusion because a lot of the things we do and operate under are illusions. I mean, our reality is based on an illusion, right? An illusion of what we believe. Somebody's doing this to me. Nobody pays any attention to me. All of those are illusions, right? So here we have people. I also think that, the president here in the United States is great at helping create that illusion, or helping people go, oh yeah, this is this, it's sleight of hand. You don't really know what's going on. And so the strength of that, and the weakness, if you will, the challenge, is to be able to know who you are, even though all of this stuff is going around and happening. Because one of the energies of Neptune is this idea of spirituality, right? This incredible explosion, if you will, the opportunity for us to connect with Source, with God, with our breath, with kind of seeing the separation, recognizing that we are all one, doesn't mean that anyone can fool us, right? Which is like, only a few people are in charge, the guy behind the curtain and all of those things. So I think it's interesting when we see all this stuff coming to the surface, because of course Pisces is not just liquid water. It's also right. It's the idea of prison and the hidden and all of the things coming to be seen, and then we get to play with and go, oh, I didn't see this, or I didn't know I had this, or look at this here. So it's kind of like we have to look through the sewage, and go, oh,
or go into the looking glass.
Right.
It's very Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole. It's all of this energy, and as Jen said about, it's kind of an opportunity to see all this glamour, and where we're kind of being hoodwinked, if you like, by, yes, the president and others around the world. He's very good at it. He's a master manipulator. If I say it enough times, it's true. That's kind of
right.
It's a great opportunity to see it as a reflection of what we're allowing into our consciousness, because even films can manipulate us. And where are we allowing ourselves to be manipulated? I do think these aspects to Uranus in Taurus and Mars in Capricorn are very good for cutting into that, and kind of, I think there's going to be moments around this new moon of, oh my goodness, I have seen this way, and this is what's really going on underneath. There's an element of cutting through that fog, if you like, with these rogue energies, with Mars being rogue or out of bounds, and Uranus being the benevolent rebel who likes to shock us. So
right. I think you're absolutely right. There's this energy of, what happens with the water, with the shock of water, is the kind of lightning strike, the light coming through, the awakening, that sudden kind of awareness, like, shock treatment kind of thing, of coming out of that being asleep, really, because that's also Neptune's area, right? Like, oh, I'm waking up, I'm seeing things that I didn't see. I'm is this the dream, or is this the illusion? That's really interesting.
It is. In fact, I've got a great picture somewhere that I might have to dig out for this new moon of what happens when lightning hits water, and this explosion of kind of fire going with the water going up. That's kind of how it feels when I look at that. Not just that it's going to be these big inner awarenesses and awakenings of, oh, holy heck, this is where I've been deluding myself, really, or allowing myself to be deluded, by all this stuff.
Yes, realization. I mean, when you look at the word realization, it's all about that energy of being catapulted out of your complacency. And we might very well see, it's kind of these underwater earthquakes, right? That's like so powerful. We may very well see this on the external as well, that people, suddenly we're going to see the curtain dropping, and kind of, and of course, we may do something, we may go back to sleep, but I think this journey that we're on in this unknown aspects is kind of prodding us again, getting that electric thing, that kind of prodding us into awakening and going, wait, I can leave my cell, I can I can walk away, from this. So yeah, it's fascinating.
There's also the aspect of Pisces and Neptune in Pisces and all this energy of the glamour of wealth and riches and all that glitters is not gold, all that kind of energy. And it's interesting that all of the leaders that are being kind of looked up to and gone, oh, you're wonderful, kind of now are quite wealthy. and Trump's the prime example again with his gold everywhere. He's like, and people are allowing themselves to see that and go, oh, it's glittery, it's shiny, it's lovely. And wow, I hope this new moon wakes some more people up.
Yes, that would be good. That would be good. But I think that, what's so fascinating about all of this is that it's us being captured by the idea, the illusion that something shiny has more value. We come back to that idea of what we're building, what has value to us, and that idea that, oh, it's shiny, therefore I must just follow it, or I want that shiny thing. Like we are like a bunch of, what do they call them, magpies. Like we're looking for the shiny. I'm gonna decorate my house. Like we go off on these little tangents, and the truth is, if we are going to go off on a tangent, let it be something that connects us to the energy of liberation, because this is what this is all about, is understanding that liberation. And I know we've talked about this before, but liberation is not, oh, I can do whatever I want, and who cares about anyone else. It's, oh, I have to take responsibility for my choices, and there's consequences. And this is very much a Saturnian thing. It's very much, I think, a Plutonian thing. It's also very much a fall, right? All of these things. It's like, oh, I made a choice. Now I have all like, we can all look at it no matter what country we're living in. And a lot of the so-called democracies that are falling apart because people were like asleep, like, oh, somebody else is going to take care of it. I don't need to do anything. I can just plod along and suffer and complain. And now it's like, okay, do I want to complain and suffer, or do I want to start to take action that's going to move me out of the cell that I've been in?
For sure. And Mars as well in Capricorn, he's the ruler of Aries, which is very much about our I am, so we're being asked to look at ourselves, and he's out of bounds and rogue, so he's saying, do it differently. And in Capricorn, yes, that responsibility again. He's conjunct the South Node, which is our past in Capricorn, which we've been talking about over and over since we've been doing this podcast, basically. The South Node is asking us to release our attachment to these outer structures and move towards our own security and our own family, if you like, with the North Node in Cancer. So that,
yeah. And a lot of love, right? There's a lot of, I mean, that's the I think the illusion here to me is a lot to do with our illusion about love, right? It's been based on like approval, like if I have enough gold, or I just adore somebody and follow them blindly, I will be rewarded, right? And we see that playing out, right, in the world. And now we're going like, wait a minute, I've done all those things and I still feel like shit, it's not working. Right. So, right. Like, how do I separate myself from that kind of toading response that I've had in my life of like needing to fit in, needing to belong, making sure nobody thought I was an outsider, and kind of going like, wait a minute, we're all outsiders. So like, if we decide we belong, right, then we can do this, we can do it together, but we have to still remember who we are in the, we have to come back to basics. We didn't talk about the cards, by the way.
Oh, we didn't, did we? No,
Yeah, so maybe it's a
let's do the
good
card
time
and
to do
then
it now.
go back to the astrology.
Right.
What's your card?
All right, so this is very interesting. My card is the, sorry, there's a bit of a glare here, but this is the 27 Soul Portal. Hmm?
Magic carpet ride.
Right, Magic Carpet Ride. Very um, Neptunian, but
Mm,
it's also this idea because when you look at the figure, very connected to
mm,
the breath, to the spirit, right? Because what keeps you afloat is your energy of spirit, the energy of being completely connected to divine love, right?
mm.
And that's what keeps you afloat. And then talking about treasure, right? Like, look, there's
Which
all
will
the treasure.
you'll see is reflected in the Chandra symbol when I come to that as well. I just noticed that. Oh, there's all this gold floating around in the water.
Right. Isn't that wild, right? And then there's like the islands, it's the feather, it's this idea of belonging, being so connected to self and to the divine energy of truth and who you are, that it's just like you can just walk on water, you can fly in a carpet.
And it reminds
Um,
me of that, the lightness of being, the unbearable lightness of being,
right,
that phrase.
exactly.
It,
Yes, yes.
and I'm going to hold my card up at the same time.
Right.
Kind of
Yes, do.
funny. As always, we didn't do this,
Yeah.
but I got the Magus.
Oh, wow.
Blue
Wow.
gold with all bits of gold floating around.
Yes,
Well,
that's
and of course,
amazing.
there's the Magician and the Mercury card, and we have Mercury retrograde conjunct the new moon. So this is this a real magical element in this new moon. So I don't, we're focusing on what you're letting go of, but this is inviting you to step into the magic of who you are. Really, it's the magic of your being, and both these
Right.
cards reflect that. It's quite beautiful.
Right. It is. It's very, very, you feel the sense of freedom in this, right? In these cards. Like, this is the message. Like, just allow yourself to be in the glory of who you are and just let go of all of those uh, bindings about what others have said it is like to be human. Like, you're supposed to, be enslaved in some way.
Yeah.
Right. And all of that illusion can just go because there's so much more.
And to go
There's
back
so
to
much
my
more.
card a little bit more,
Right.
Jen had all the gold floating around in hers. I've kind of got the gold cup, the gold arrow.
Yes.
It's all floating around you. It's not saying this, and the gold sword. All of this is still relevant. All those things in the outer world are still relevant, but they're not connected to the person in the card. So the person, you, is the central figure, and you are what matters. And I love that it's got angel wings on the feet, like Hermes,
Right.
killing the dragon behind. It's kind of amazing
Right.
cards. And we didn't look at each other's cards before we did this. I love
Yeah, we didn't know we had matching cards. Also, what I find really fascinating, I did look at before, we didn't talk about, is really fascinating is the numbers on this chart. So my card was a 9, and we actually have a couple of 27. Saturn is 27.
it.
Well, maybe we don't have a couple, but we have a bunch of 9s, right? So we have a couple of 18s. You see, Mercury's at 9. We have
Venus,
uh,
18.
Venus at 18, Jupiter at 18. So that's really fascinating because 9 is about this, the compassion, the greater picture, but it also allows us to fully come into our expression of who we are and let go of the old.
Oh,
Uh,
Ceres is at 9.
oh, right. So there's a bunch of 9s, and then we have a bunch of 3s,
Uh-huh.
a couple of 6s. So these are all the 3, 6, 9s, are all the emotional, like it's like we're releasing our emotional bondage of how we've looked at our lives, how we've considered, what we've made important. We've made these like safety. Oh, I'm not safe unless I have the approval of my master. Like, I'm not following my man or my
Mhm.
parents, right? Or what the culture says is going to give me riches.
And then my cards are 1, and that really is it the only one? Or have we got some others?
Right.
Anyway,
Not too many ones.
Black Moon Lilith, true Black Moon Lilith is at 1 degree of the first sign, Aries, so 1 degree of the one sign, and she is our kind of wild self, free of the shame of any shame we feel for just being who we are through our upbringing and the cultures that we've been in. She's saying break free of that. So
Right. And it's fascinating because that Mars out of bounds is helping with that. Of course, the Aquarian energy is helping, like all of this idea of being that whole Piscean energy is about, right? Freeing ourselves and getting focused on our self-expression. When we focus on that, we are not delusional. We're not getting caught up, right? In what was the thing with the ring from the Lord of the Rings? Remember? I keep thinking about that. Remember the Gollum who had the ring, right? Yes, my precious, right? It's kind of like, yeah, we've been under this illusion. I got to hold on to my little ring, but
yeah.
And then it controls us, right? Now we have to break away from that. So really fascinating.
Now I do want to mention, Jen and I talked about it a little bit before, that Saturn will be at 27 degrees on this new moon, with Pluto at 24 and Jupiter 18. These three are all heading towards another more big conjunctions that are going to transform this year completely. But Saturn, right on this day, on this Pisces new moon, is going to be sat on the Pluto of the USA chart. It's going to be on the Saturn of the Chinese chart, and it's going to be on something in the UK chart. I looked and I can't remember what it was, but I do want to say that this, what we're saying about stepping into your own responsibility and taking care of yourself and those you love and the world around you, and not relying on the outer world, is going to become even more important, because this is good. I mean, in the USA, it's starting, really, the USA Pluto return. We've been feeling it building, but oh man, it's really building. We think things are crazy already. It's going to get crazier. We've got Brexit in the UK, of course. We've got the coronavirus in China. And incidentally, the asteroid Hygeia, which is about health, moves into Gemini just before this new moon, which is an air sign, and it's an airborne disease. There is going to be more chaos. There is going to be more disruption and institutions collapsing and things. So the message to really step into your own authority is even more important. And Jen already mentioned that Venus and Jupiter are both at 18 degrees. Now, in culmination, Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn are making a T-square that's going to be around for quite a while, with Venus, Eris in Aries, and Juno in Libra. And this is all about shaking things up and really starting to think about your part in the world with the others. So that's
right. And that's really very profound when you think about it in terms of what it means. Like when we talk about not just airborne things. So what else is airborne is our voices, our breath, our heart, all of these things. Like, what are we taking charge of? Like we can't really run around putting out fires that other people are putting out. I mean, lighting, but we can be very focused on our journey and what we believe in, and bringing in the truths and the standards, the values that are sacred to us. So it really is important to understand that as this thing breaks away, as our egoic shapes and all the things we've kind of trusted in and looked at and believed that would be here forever are collapsing. And I also think that there's a lot here to do with religion in some way. For me, anyway, that's what I get. And I think we've talked about the fact that religion is about a belief system. It's not necessarily saying like so-and-so says this, or they're reading a book and they're saying it means something. It really is our belief systems. And it's kind of where we put our trust, the trust of our heart. Like, here's my leader, and my leader says, oh, you know, God or this sacred energy is, this is what's true, and this is what I need to do. Uh, and I think we do need that stuff, because we need to go back to some of the ancient wisdom of how the earth was a vessel for the divine, right? The earth speaks to us, and through the trees, through the things we build, that's our greatest communication with the divine, not some other person who stands up on a soapbox and says, okay, the message is all coming through me. Now, I'm not going to say that these people aren't speaking truth. They may have a lot of truth, but you still have to filter it. Is it something that means something to you, right? Or is it just something like, oh, I don't have to worry about it. There's the person who's acting like my parent or my leader. They've got all the answers. I'm just going to follow them, you know.
Trust blindly. It's, yeah, no.
Right.
Being
And
out,
remember,
take off the blinders, basically.
right. And we need to be discerning. I mean, this is the whole point, is when you're building a house, it's like the three, what do they call the three pigs, right?
Yes.
The story of the three
Three
pigs,
little
right?
pigs. Yeah.
Right. I mean, those stories are so powerful, because the first little pig, what did he do? He did like straw, because he was in a hurry, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he followed the illusion. Somebody sold him the straw and said, oh, look, you can just, you'll be safe immediately. And the one that landed up being the safest was the one that was discerning. That went like, okay, wait, straw's not going to do it. It's going to take a little longer than I want to build this, but I want to make sure.
Solid.
Right, right. And so this is it. We got to remember, which pig are we? Like, which house are we building right now? Because yes, we can make a house of straw, but you know, some of us, Rapunzel maybe can turn straw into gold. But the rest of us have to decide, like, what's true and what can we create that's solid and true and will stand up to the blowing of the wolf's wind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So, is there anything else on this chart we want to talk about? That T square actually between Venus and Eris, you know, it is also, and Juno in opposite in Libra is also reflecting the divine female energy coming back up again. We've talked about that over and over. So there's that reflected in the chart as well. You know, and that doesn't mean women necessarily. It can do as well, but it just means a different sense of being, and you know, understanding more, having more compassion and understanding and love, rather than these are the rules and we control and that kind of energy. That's totally shifting with this T square in this chart. It's going to be ongoing. It's not on the new moon, just on the new moon. It's this is a kind of year-long, couple of years long energy, really. So yeah.
Right. Well, one of the great things about the female energy, and I think this chart speaks to this a lot, is about the idea of coming up with solutions, creative solutions, moving away from, oh, this is the way it's always been, and I have this issue, this is happening, what are we going to do? How can we remember who we are, band together and create solutions that are going to work? Not solutions based on fear, but solutions that are based on a belief, a new belief system, on hope, on the idea of kindness and love and all of the things Lou was just talking about. That's really important to understand, that this is what this is about. How do we activate our imagination? How do we activate solutions that haven't been created yet?
And I've just noticed as well, we haven't talked about Pallas Athena, my favorite asteroid, the visionary, visionary strategist who creates plans. And Jen kind of nudged me when she said the word about planning, because she's there in Capricorn, coming up behind all the ones that are causing all the destruction. And she's at 13, which is another 4, and isn't 13 kind of the number of the goddess, really?
Divine feminine.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful number, because it's about disrupting the status quo to create something new, the unexpected, So yeah, there's definitely going to be some unexpected things or unexpected uh, events, like we talked about, knowledge, awareness, that's going to require us to now go, okay, what do we do now? And let's focus on the solutions and not on despair, right? Like, what else can we do? Um, I was reading somewhere, and I don't remember where, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. Somebody was talking about the fact that we're in this age of the older woman coming forward, and we're in the preparatory stage. And in I believe it was 2024, is when the woman will really start to rise into prominence. And I tend to believe, like you, Lou, is that it may not all be women, but it's certainly people that have come to terms or balance their male female, right? In more of that divine energy, remembering we're in the balance of learning how to balance our relationships right now, right? And that's all just part of it.
So it's not necessarily about a specific gender. It's more about, it's not the alpha male. It's more that kind of kinder energy, I guess. That's, yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it's foolish to just pick and say, oh, the women are going to save us now, or this one's going to save us, when it's like we have to look at the bigger picture of who has the ability to be a great leader. And like we all do, if we're willing to be humble and take leadership when we need to, and recognize what's important, and be able to release the things. Like sometimes we have these great ideas and it's just not the time, right? It's too early or it's not appropriate. So what else can we do?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez might be old enough.
Right. I think her or all of those people at that age are amazing. This is what we need. We need people that have guts. We need people that are so connected to their truth that they're willing to speak up, and they're willing to confront, and they're intelligent, and they can hold a conversation, and they can be compassionate and do all those things. I mean, sort of just these kind of wooden figures that are all about, what's in it for me thing. So, yeah.
So are we on the symbol time? Shall we do that?
Yeah.
Or
I was just going to put the light. Well, I was going to put the light on, because for those of you who don't know, I'm in South Africa, so that's why I'm wearing summer, but it's evening and it's coming in here now.
Yeah, go put the light on.
All right.
We could do that. Yeah, we've had to kind of adjust time zones for recording this because Jen's back in her home country and for a visit, and I'm still in Utah. So that's the beauty of podcasting. We can do it from anywhere. Oh, that's better.
Amazing. Right, now you can see me.
See, Jen.
I know, it was like, I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting dark. It's like, right.
Are we ready for the symbols, do you think? And then, well, actually, let's ask Jen. As Jen is an Akashic Records reader, and I do, especially because this is such a spiritual, connected to source kind of new moon. It'd be lovely if there's any messages from the masters. But also, we did mention briefly that this is the 5th of 6 new moons at 4 degrees. So this is a 6-month unfolding of all that Jen has said about the fours. So I wanted to emphasize.
Right. Yes. And what's so fascinating is this is the 23rd, right? This is happening on the 23rd, and it's an 11 universal day. So 11, of course, the gateway, the portal, and that's a 2. And we do have some striking 8s. Neptune is at 17 degrees, which is the 8 is the number of leaving a legacy, really digging deep into what's happening.
And 23, Eris is at 23 degrees. And I've talked about it before, about it being the number of our pairs of chromosomes and our digits, fingers, toes,
right,
nose and ears. And it's a very human number. And Eris is transforming because she is a newly discovered body and making those 5, again, this 5, the 5, 23, 5, making 5
right.
exact squares to Pluto over this year and next year. So
Right.
Yeah.
And we have with the dates it's 4, 5, 6. So whenever we have numbers that kind of follow each other, it's also adding a very powerful message. I'm just going to look here. For some reason, I'm looking at what's very interesting here. Sedna, I think she's at Vesta, Sedna, and Hygeia. I know they're not exactly right on top of one another, but they're pretty close. Oh, we didn't really talk much about Uranus and Chiron, did we? Well, they both at 3 degrees, right? And I did mention the 9, 6, and 3 and 3. This is the emotional aspect, but 3 is about the personal emotion. I call it the number of self-love. It's this opportunity to express ourselves through love. And when we love everything, which I think this is what I'm hearing the message through this whole Neptunian thing, is an opportunity to stop being so obsessed with like wanting people to do the right thing, right? Just forget about that, because that's taking a lot of energy and it feels very burdensome. And to just let go of that, like just recognize everybody's doing their thing and that's okay. And we may not agree with it. And how do we move from I don't agree with it? We move by doing things the way we believe, right? So instead of spending a lot of energy kind of pointing fingers or looking back, we're gathering our energy and strength and focus to begin to swim forward. And they're saying, the Akashic Masters are saying, it's almost like, and the picture I'm seeing is like dolphins. It's almost like we're dolphins, and we're using the energy of these lightning bolts, this energy of the healing from Uranus and Chiron, and these female energies as well, to kind of, it's like this lightning that's going through our bodies, through our tails, moving us into a whole new energy, like we're learning to move in a new way, and to work with that as opposed to, oh, I'm stuck. Look, why are these people still not getting it? And just kind of like to start to swim towards what you believe in, what you're creating, and just allow that expansion of the mind to open up with this incredible fire and liquid and motion.
There's never any mistakes. I'm actually in the middle of an 8-week course called The Magic You're Born For. And that what Jen just said reminds me of that. You're happy, and it takes me back to the magic carpet ride and the magician card that I put. You are being asked to step into the magic of you and putting yourself first and then loving those around you. It's you have to love yourself first though.
Right. And so this is what they're saying. It's like the belief, having the belief and going, I'm going, instead of saying, nobody's coming with me. It's just like, okay, I've got to get going. It's the imaginal cells, like when the caterpillar, eats and eats and eats, and then has the cells, the imaginal cells that have a greater vision. They hold the vision for the wings of the butterfly. And the caterpillar is terrified of the change, right? Because and tries to kill all the these imaginal cells. And then at some point, the imaginal cells just keep moving towards that space. And of course, at some point, the caterpillar in the cocoon
created. Yeah.
Right. Because they focus on where they're going. They're not worried about what the caterpillar, the fear, is doing. They just keep moving and swimming with the energy.
So yes, there's disruption and all this happening that we've talked about, and the shadow of Pisces. We've talked about a lot of Pisces energy, but fear and victimhood is the shadow of Pisces. Just step into a magical space and trust and faith. Do whatever it takes to, even if you have to ignore the outside world news. I am able to watch it and switch off and not fall into despair and fear. But if you are one that falls into that, then protect yourself.
Right. Do more meditation. Allow the energy to come into your heart. Allow yourself to be, to raise your vibration through the choices you make. So if you find that energy damaging and depleting, clearly it's not good for you. So, right. You can just get the highlights from somebody else. Right?
Exactly.
You need to know what's going on.
Some of us enjoy it, and we'll do the work for you.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it's like this thing, you've got to question when you hear all the stuff and you start going into that kind of monkey mind fear. Then you've got to question, why am I afraid of somebody who says something, right? Because that's just one piece of the whole picture. And people in the news, that's their business, is to promote fear, because it makes it more exciting, and it gets everyone running to the paper and yelling and screaming. And
exactly. Yeah.
right. So right, take care of yourself and your body. That's another thing. It's just being aware of your health, your body, your breath.
So you first, it's like the oxygen mask. Yeah.
Exactly.
Put yours on first, then your family, those you love, and then it starts to ripple out. So, yeah.
Right. You're just taking care of you, bottom line.
The symbols.
All right. Am I going first, or you are?
I'm going to go first this time because I love this one. I mentioned it already when Jen's and my cards came up about the gold floating around. And the symbol, the Chandra symbol, is thousands of gold nuggets glistening at the bottom of a clear stream. Subtle senses, you sense the subtle depths of experience and find therein glory, majesty, and divine power. Your eyes inside are open in places others are blind. You are shown the wonders of the deep, yet an immense destiny challenges. For this is a selfless realm, utterly selfless. How can you uphold the inner light in its own pure radiance? It takes great courage, for you will be flooded by collective contents and asked to serve totally. Can you rise to this? Or will special coloring shadow this realm? Only true inspiration can show the way. And if there comes instead the idea of it, the received image, the secondary version, all will be illusory and like fool's gold of a shallow consistency, losing all savor.
Wow.
Yeah. So that talks to the illusion and things, and it's just, I love your eyes inside are open in places others are blind. So that it's just saying what we've been saying. Go within and find your answers within. So
right. And the selfless beauty of being of service, not through fear or not through obligation, but through pure joy. Just like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
And then I can take care of myself very easily, because that's what it is too, right?
Yeah.
So, beautiful. All right. So the Sabian symbol, I couldn't remember the name. Okay, Sabian symbol, a church bazaar. The value of giving a spiritual or transcendent sanction to even the most commonplace interchanges between social persons and individual minds. So this is actually the last of 5 symbols, emphasizing the interaction between people constituting a social group, small or large. It brings in the element of religious sanctions. The purpose of any organized religion is primarily to meet the need of giving a more permanent significance to interpersonal relationships within the framework of a particular way of life and culture. It helps to keep the society whole by making it holy, at least in principle and ideal. It justifies human behavior by blessing it with divine revelation of what is good and valuable. It idealizes biological and social needs by ritualizing them. So the note is ritualized beneficence. Stresses the possibility of the presence of God in even the most material human activities.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Makes me think about Jupiter. We didn't talk that much about him, but in the sense of expanding, all of these things that perhaps we look at as negative or bad because they're collapsing or being overblown.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that joy in connecting with each other, right? At the church bazaar.
Yeah. And it's emphasizing the importance of ritual in our lives, which people have done forever. Ritual does connect us, and and maybe it's about choosing your rituals wisely in this time as well.
Well, yes, and I think too, when you think about a church bazaar, and I keep thinking about the word B-I-Z-A.
Oh yeah,
A-R-R-E, bizarre, very bizarre. But the idea is community, right? It's humanity. It's people coming together to share time and an experience and sharing their opinions about what's happening without attacking one another, right? It's a very human scale of doing things. Let's gather together. Let's talk about this. Let's discuss what we just saw and come to conclusions so we can go home and go, yeah, I was so connected with the people. We found something meaningful in the disaster we're experiencing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Through the ritual, through the connection.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right then, Jen. Tell everybody where they can find you. Or do we have anything else to say before we finish? No, I would like to remind people to send questions in, weirdlymagicalpodcast@gmail.com, and that we have our Patreon, patreon.com/weirdlymagical, for just $3 a month to support our podcast. But other than that, let's talk about where people can find us individually.
All right. So you can find me on my website, jenduchenne.com. I am pretty much all over Facebook. I have a group, We Belong Here, I think it's called. And I do have a group that I run. I teach Akashic classes, people how to read Akashic records. I also do Akashic readings and other readings. So you can find out all about that on my website. You can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram. Just Google my name. I'm somewhere. And the illuminating journey cards are available on my website as well. And I do have a class coming up teaching people how to read their records, and it's a lab intensive, very exciting class. It's in San Francisco area, the last weekend in February. So if you're in the area, connect with me and we can talk about it if you're interested.
Cool. And I am Louise Eddington. My website is louiseeddington.com. Both my books can be found on that or on Amazon, Modern Astrology, and or any indie booksellers as well online. And The Complete Guide to Astrology, the new book. At the moment, I'm most excited about doing my free class, Mercury retrograde, and the fear around it kind of drives me nuts. So I decided to do a class to help people navigate their way through it and find their inner magic, instead of going into that fear and despair. So that's the class is open now, in that there is a couple of videos to help you create your own chart, but we have a first live call tomorrow. They're all recorded though, so you can find that class anywhere online. My Facebook page is Cosmic Owl Astrology. I'm Cosmic Owl Astrology on Instagram. I have a Facebook group called Planetary Magic Cafe that's a lot of fun too. So come join the free class. What's better than free, really? Give me your email, I suppose. That's it. And but I decided to do it free because Mercury retrograde happens 3-4 times a year, and there's so much fear around it, especially in our Western world. It made me laugh because I have a friend in Sweden. She's like, why do you all go on about Mercury retrograde all the time? We never mention it here.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So better to work with it than fall into that fear. So anyway.
Right.
Oh, anyway, yeah, come follow me anyway, even if you don't join the class. And I also do astrology readings and all that palaver too. Of course. Okay, so for now, unless you've got any final words, Jen, it's goodbye from Lou.
And goodbye from Jen.